what I would hope Amazon's legacy would be is Earth's most customer-centric company. What we have always wanted to do is raise the standard for what it means to be customer-centric to such a degree that other organizations, whether they be other companies or whether they be hospitals or government agencies, whatever the organization is, they should look at Amazon as a role model and say, how can we be as customer-centric as Amazon?
Even competitors, I imagine, right?
Hopefully competitors as well. But if we could make, if that could be our legacy, that we kind of raise the general idea of what it means to be customer-centric, that would be a huge accomplishment. It would be accomplishing a mission that's much bigger than ourselves.
Harvard Business Review called you recently the most successful living CEO. Steve Jobs obviously was listed as well. What does that mean to you as you consider your own leadership style?
Well, I think if you look at the big ideas at Amazon, what we're really focused on is thinking long-term, putting the customer at the center of our universe, and inventing. Those are the three big ideas, and they work well together. I don't think that you can invent on behalf of customers unless you're willing to think long-term, because a lot of invention doesn't work. If you're going to invent, it means you're going to experiment, and if you're going to experiment, it means you're going to fail, and if you're going to fail, you have to think long-term. So these three ideas, customer centricity, long-term thinking, and a passion for invention, those go together. That's kind of the Amazon cocktail. That's how we do it, and by the way, we have a lot of fun doing it that way.
Because one of our leadership principles is that good leaders are right a lot. And it sounds kind of like, well, great, but is there some way that I can practice being right a lot? And you're not going to be right all the time, but I do think with practice, you can be right more often. And I've observed people who are right a lot, and I notice a few things about them. The first is that people who are right a lot, they listen a lot. And people who are right a lot change their mind a lot. And people who are right a lot, they seek to disconfirm their most profoundly held convictions, which is very unnatural for humans. So humans mostly, as we go about life, we're very selective in the evidence that we let seep into us. And we like to observe the evidence that confirms our pre-existing beliefs. And people who are right a lot work very hard to do that unnatural thing of trying to disconfirm their beliefs. And by the way, changing your mind a lot is so important. You should never let anybody trap you with anything you've said in the past, because that is just life is complicated, the world is complicated, and sometimes you get new data. And when you get new data, you should change your mind. By the way, sometimes you don't get new data, and you just reanalyze the situation, and you realize it's more complicated than you initially thought it was, and you change your mind. This is something, it's frustrating to watch, and I will not get into politics here tonight, but it's frustrating to watch politicians because they're almost not allowed to change their mind. As soon as they change their mind, they get accused of being flip-floppers. When reality is, anybody who doesn't change their mind a lot is dramatically underestimating the complexity of the world that we live in. Yeah, well, two pizza teams is something that we've been preaching at Amazon almost from the very beginning, and it's a simple idea, which is no team should be so large that it cannot be fed with just two pizzas. And so obviously to do great things you need big teams, but you need to subdivide them. And the reason that it's so helpful is because there's a natural, we humans grew up around campfires and telling each other stories, and you're sitting at tables tonight that have about 10 people at each table. 10 people, maybe 12 people, is the perfect size to have a natural human coordination without a lot of structure. And if you want to have a big group of 100 people or 500 people organized, you have to have a lot of structure to make that work. And so if you can arrange to do big things with a multitude of small teams, and that takes a lot of effort to organize that way, but if you can figure that out, the communication on those small teams will be very natural and easy. And then 6-page memos in lieu of PowerPoints. Many, many years ago now, we outlawed PowerPoint presentations at Amazon were probably the smartest thing we ever did.
What do you do, though, as a leader of a major online company to make sure that you are in touch with people like some 19-year-old in his bedroom with a computer changing profoundly so much that all the record companies want to see him? How do you stay in touch with that kind of experimentation and that kind of energy?
Hire smart people.
And how do you go about that?
If you don't hire, because a single individual cannot keep in touch with the plethora of of new things happening. So what you have to do is you have to put in place a recruiting process that attracts and retains smart, talented, hardworking people who want to be a part of your mission, whatever it is.
Then when you talk to them, when they bring out the CEO to talk to these people, what's the mission statement you tell them?
First, it's Earth's most customer-centric company. And we have and I explain what we mean by that, because we have a very precise definition for customer-centric. It means listen, invent, and personalize. So first, you have to listen to customers. Companies that don't listen to customers fail. Second, you have to invent for customers, because companies that only listen to customers fail. It's not the customer's job to invent for themselves. It's our job at Amazon.com to invent things like one-click and other things, like sales rank going from 1 to 18 million. Those kinds of things that customers really like, that's our job, not theirs, to think of that. And third is personalize. Take every individual customer and put them at the center of their own universe. And then, when we talk about Earth's most customer-centric company, we mean that in a very broad way. This is bigger than Amazon.com. What we want to do is sort of uplift the worldwide standards for customer service and customer centricity. So this is sort of like Sony. Sony, sort of born right after World War II, is a company that set out, if you go and look at their early mission statement, it was not to be known for quality. It was to make Japan known for quality, not Sony, Japan. And that's sort of what we want to do. We want to do something bigger than Amazon.com.
To make what? Well, define it for me.
It would be that that we set a new example for customer service and customer centricity that other companies look at, admire, and want to emulate. And that is a mission that people can get excited about.
So a little while back, Amazon was criticized for having a harsh work culture. And I'm just wondering if, and you guys came out and defended yourselves and explained it. I have kind of a two-part question. One is whether you considered it fair at all or not, whether it made you rethink anything about your work culture.
Yeah, no, it's a very good
inside
question.
the company. And the second question is a little bit of a setup I need to tell all of you, because I know you have an employee program that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I want to...
But do the first one first.
Okay, so, yeah, it really has not. I'm very proud of the culture that we have at Amazon. And, I think of it as a gold standard culture for innovation and pioneering work. And the people, I work with these people who, they're missionaries for what they do. They are, if you're giving great customer experience, there's the only way to do that is with happy people. You can't do it with a set of miserable people, watching the clock all day.
So does that include work-life balance and all those things?
Yes, but I teach 3 leadership classes a year at Amazon. I'm a part of it. They're bigger classes, but I come in and teach a session. And I always talk about work-life balance, except I like to use the phrase work-life harmony rather than balance, because to me, balance implies a strict trade, whereas I find that when I am happy at work, I come home more energized, I'm a better husband, a better dad, and when I'm happy at home, I come in and better boss and better colleague. And so it's not, you could be out of work and have terrible work-life balance. You know, even though you've got all the time in the world,
Right.
you could just feel like, oh my God, you know, I'm miserable, and you would be draining energy. And so you have to find that harmony. It's a much better word. And I think for most people, it's about meaning. People want to know that they're doing something interesting and useful. And for us, you know, because of the challenges that we have chosen for ourselves, we get to work in the future, and it's super fun to work in the future for the right kind of person. There are people, I mean, who, you know, ours is an environment that embraces a lot of change. We have to, because the internet is changing, the technologies that we use are changing. We operate at the intersection of technology and retail, both of which are highly competitive industries. But it's a really, for somebody who hated change, you know, I imagine high tech would be a pretty bad career. It would be very tough, you know, and there are much more stable industries. And so they should probably choose one of those more stable industries with less change, and they'd probably be happier there. That industry would be tough for me. So we're not all the same. And for me, a job that, I don't know, like for me, the job that would be the hard would be like, I don't know, insurance claims adjuster, something, you know, where I had the same job every day and it didn't change frequently. That would be hard. I'd do it, and I'd do it at a high quality level, but I wouldn't like it. And
A lot of them have iPads now.
Okay, even so.
I'm just saying, there's a little change there.
Okay.
Okay.
Pretty soon they'll have machine learning too. Again, my job, one of my jobs as the leader of Amazon, is to encourage people to be bold. And people love to focus on things that aren't yet working. And that's good, it's human nature. That kind of divine discontent can be very helpful. But you really, you know, it's incredibly hard to get people to take bold bets. And you need to encourage that. And if you're going to take bold bets, they're going to be experiments. And if they're experiments, you don't know ahead of time whether they're going to work. Experiments are, by their very nature, prone to failure. But big successes, a few big successes, compensate for dozens and dozens of things that didn't work. So, you know, bold bets, AWS, Kindle, Amazon Prime, our third-party seller business, all of those things are examples of bold bets that did work, and they pay for a lot of experiments. I've made billions of dollars of failures at Amazon.com, literally billions of dollars of failures. And you know, you might remember pets.com or Cosmo, or you know, give myself a root canal with no anesthesia very easily. None of those things are fun, but they also, they don't matter. What really matters is companies that don't continue to experiment, companies that don't embrace failure, they eventually get in a desperate position where the only thing they can do is make a kind of Hail Mary bet at the very end of their corporate existence. Whereas companies that are, you know, making bets all along, even, you know, big bets, but not bet the company bets. I don't believe in bet the company bets. That's when you're desperate. That's the last thing you can do.
At what point can the Earth's best customer experience deliverer start raising prices?
We're not going to raise prices. So if you're waiting for us to raise prices, give up now.
But
we are going to lower prices.
But
so
let me jump in on that, because I mean, I think that's an important point, not so, partly because of questions that everybody raises about cash flow and profitability, but because it looks like shopping online is not price sensitive. In other words, all this reports that I read about people who were forced to raise their prices in order to generate more cash, they're finding that customers are continuing to buy online. So price point sensitivity doesn't seem to be a critical
just
factor.
because you could raise prices doesn't mean you should. So we have huge economic advantages over physical stores in terms of a centralized distribution model, in terms of not having expensive retail real estate. We have never been one of those companies that lowered prices to unreasonable levels.
I know that,
So our pricing is sustainable, and as we get more efficient, and as we get more scale, and as we're a buying cooperative not for 20 million customers, but for 40 million customers, we're going to be able to lower prices even further.
and that's a good idea. But I'm just asking if, in fact, if in fact you could sell your products at a higher price and customers would be willing to pay a higher price, you wouldn't do it?
No.
You would generate more cash?
Not necessarily. So think about the thing that benefits us most. So there's an equation here. When you lower prices, you also increase the number of customers you have, you increase the level of revenues you have. One of the things that people make a mistake on is they think that you're trying to optimize for percentage margins. You know, they think you're trying, which is not what you're trying to do. You're actually trying to maximize dollar margins. And those, if you try to maximize dollar margins, oftentimes that causes you to want a lower price, not increase price. Another point I would make is that unlike physical world retailing, which is a variable cost business, so if you double your sales, you double your costs.
Right.
Online retailing is a fixed cost business, much more so. So when you double your sales, you don't come anywhere near to doubling your costs. As a result, one of the intuitions that's wrong about the physical world, we all know in the physical world that whatever place has the best service can't have the lowest prices. Online, I think that's wrong. I think online you can have the best service and the lowest prices if you have enough scale.
So I have been a shareholder for a long, long time, incredibly happy, rode it up in the bubble, rode it all the way down, hung out for those 7 lean years, and then suddenly it takes off like a rocket ship. Very much a believer in the long term, the investment cycle, the big bets, all that stuff. Even I, last quarter, had a little bit of a gulp when I saw the fact that you were not just breaking even anymore, but losing a boatload of money, and in fact, way more than you even said you were going to lose, which I thought was sandbagging. Oh, they just said they're going to lose, and then they're going to come in with a profit, and the stock's going to soar. It was worse than you said. So when do you begin to say, oh, okay, that's it, we've got to rein it in a little bit?
Where's this part where you're extra nice to me because I'm an investor in the company? Is that coming? Because I want to stay around.
I'm asking you as a shareholder.
Look, we would all love all of our numbers to be smooth lines up and to the right, and that would be terrific. But that's not how it works. Those numbers are output measures. And I guess you could try to manage your quarterly earnings very precisely, but I think personally that would be a mistake. Most of the work that we put into any particular quarter happened years ago. So it's not, there aren't that many knobs you can turn during a quarter. I mean, you can, but they're like eating your seed corn if you turn those knobs. You don't want to do that. And so people. I think if you focus on the controllable inputs to your business instead of the outputs, in the long term, you get better results. So the Benjamin Graham quote here is that in the short term, the stock market is a voting machine. In the long term, it's a weighing machine. And I think people are well advised to build a company that wants to be weighed and not voted upon. And that means having good return on invested capital and having lots of free cash flow. But if you said to me, if I said, here's a job I would reject. If somebody came up to me and said, Jeff, I want your job to be to drive up the Amazon stock price and just manage that directly. Now this might sound ridiculous to some of you, but many companies actually do this. They actually go out and they try to sell the stock. That's kind of the final output. And it's much better to say, okay, let's not do that. That's not going to be sustainable. It's kind of a silly approach. What are the inputs to a higher stock price? And you say, okay, well, free cash flow and return on invested capital are inputs to a higher stock price. Okay, so let's keep working backwards. What are the inputs to free cash flow? And you keep working backwards until you get to something that's controllable. And a controllable input for free cash flow would be something like lower cost structure. And then you back up from there and you say, okay, well, if we can improve our picking efficiency in our fulfillment centers and reduce defects, defects are very, very costly. It's probably, reducing defects at the root is one of the best ways to lower cost structure. And so then that starts to be a job you would accept. You would say, if you're a reasonable person, you would say, I have no idea how to drive up the stock price. I can't manage that directly. It's not a controllable input. But I can make your picking algorithms more efficient, and that will reduce cost structure, and then follow that chain all along the way. That's what you do in all of these businesses. You want customer obsession, You want to invent your way out of boxes. You want to invent your way into the future. You want to be patient, and you want to have operational excellence so that you're finding defects at the root and fixing them.